It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Nashville Predators surrendered a 2-goal lead, but hung on to take 2 points, winning via shootout over the Calgary Flames. Philip Forsberg and Matt Duchene, the goal scorers. Duchene's goal puts him at 40 for the season for the first time in franchise history and in his career. Now, that gives the Preds a little more cushion in that first wild card spot in the West with 5 regular season games remaining, 2 points ahead of Dallas, 6 points clear of Vegas, who's on the outside looking in. The Stars take on the Oilers tonight. The Golden Knights will play the Capitals. The Preds will be back in action Saturday at the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Memphis Grizzlies tied up the series in Game 2 with a 124-96 win over Minnesota at home on Tuesday. John Morant, 1 rebound shy of a triple-double with 23 points, 9 boards, and 10 assists. Game 3 in Minneapolis will be tomorrow. Around the league, the New Orleans Pelicans made it a 1-1 series against the Suns, and the Miami Heat took a 2-game lead over Atlanta with a 115-105 win. The Atlanta Braves defeated the LA Dodgers last night 3-1 to improve to 6-7. Rubber match happens this afternoon, a 2:10 first pitch in LA. The wait continues for a handful of wide receivers looking for their second NFL contract, including Titans wideout A.J. Brown. But in San Francisco, Adam Schefter said on Tuesday on ESPN that Deebo Samuel has halted talks with the 49ers and appears to not want to get a deal done. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hello. Good morning. Welcome in on this Wednesday to 104.5 The Zone. Happy to have you guys in for another 3 hours of jam-packed and loaded sports talk conversation. We've got a lot of fun things to get into today. We got Lucas Panzica. He's back there making it happen behind the scenes. If you want to talk to Lucas and then talk to me, you can get involved with today's conversation. 615-737-1045 is how you do that. 615-737-1045. That's how you get involved. So, I think that we have to start with, any number of local sports. Do we count Memphis as local? I feel like we should.
In the playoffs.
Only for the playoffs. All right, so we have Memphis has a visa only in the postseason. Do they get to consider or get to be considered local sports here in Nashville?
I'm sure Memphis folks won't like hearing that.
I'm certain that's true. I'm sure Will Bowling is the gatekeeper for any Memphis fans or any Nashville fans who are trying to bandwagon with Memphis now that they're, the number 2 team in the NBA's Western Conference.
Yeah, Will's answer to that question is a definitive no as to whether or not Memphis is local.
Well, then it's lucky that his time is done today.
I have not seen many people hate things as much as Will Bowling hates the city of Memphis.
It's interesting. And we've talked about this rivalry before, and ultimately, I don't want to spend too much time on the Grizz because John Morant looked great last night. He was so close to having a triple-double. Grizzlies ended up rolling, and I kind of moved away from paying attention to the later stages of that game. It was very much in hand, and Pete Pranica, the voice of the Memphis Grizzlies, will actually join us tomorrow. He was on the call for last night's game on NBA TV if you're watching it out of market, or if you watched it, as I did, on Bally Sports. But on the other Bally Sports channel was something that, while not postseason yet, I found to be far more engaging. Now, I want Memphis to advance in the postseason. I want to talk about John Morant at some point throughout the course of this summer. I love the NBA. I know that's not the favorite topic of discussion for the vast majority of people listening to this radio show. That's all well and good, but you do care about the Nashville Predators, or at least a larger percentage of you, I think, do. Lucas, have we ever in the history of this show, over just a year and a month, almost a year and 2 months since we've been on the air, have we ever opened a show with a Panzica Preds Minute?
Surely we have.
I don't think that's so.
At some point last season during the playoff run, which was one round, I feel like we had to have.
I think that you may be mistaken but you would have better knowledge of this, although I don't know when you're listening and when you're not, because yesterday I just lost you in the middle of the radio show because Mickey Ryan came in there with Dr. Pepper cake and you were done.
Yeah, that was amazing. Still thinking about that.
Yeah, and not thinking about what we're talking about for 3 hours today. So I don't think your judgment can be trusted in this regard. But desperate hockey at Bridgestone Arena last night. That was a hell of a lot of fun. Now, maybe not if you are looking for comfortable wins, things that can just help you secure the postseason spot, hang on to that first wild card spot that the Nashville Predators, as of this morning, still do occupy after beating the Calgary Flames in Bridgestone Arena last night. And this is the part of sports that I love the most, right? Titans were a 1 seed this year. There were times when there was great desperation, but the NFL, you almost grade it differently, right? Because the inventory of games is so much smaller. The NFL remains America's most popular sport, I think in part, not just because of the sport itself, but because there's just so many fewer, that sounds like an oxymoron, so few opportunities for you to gain ground if you drop a game, say, in the early part of the season to the New York Jets, as Tennessee did. Now, in hockey and in basketball, when you're trying to make the postseason push, like the desperation at the end of the playoffs, or for the people who are still trying to get in the mix, get in the hunt, or retain their position in a wild card spot, I find that vastly more interesting. And it's the time of the year, the time of the sports calendar that I think hockey catches at least my attention the most. Now, Lucas, you went to the game last night.
I did.
You had last-minute tickets?
Yeah.
How did you come about these tickets?
My roommate bought tickets for a date back in the fall for the Calgary game, and that game got moved around due to COVID, and we realized like Monday afternoon that the game got moved to last night. So we had 2 tickets on our hands.
A couple of follow-ups. Well, this isn't really a follow-up question. This reaffirms my belief that you and Blue do not do anything together, and that this is, in fact, a romantic venture even, that your girlfriend was not a part of. So at least in this case, there was not a third wheel.
In my defense, my girlfriend is currently in Toledo as she scouts basically her new home for residency.
All right, very good. Secondarily, is Blue still seeing this woman?
Let's move on.
Okay. Excellent. Desperate postseason hockey. That's what Lucas was in attendance. Lucas and Blue, romantic or not?
It basically was postseason hockey. It might have been a preview for postseason hockey.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like you have the desperation of giving up the 2-goal lead to where your chest gets tight in those moments. And honestly, I think that's when sport's the most fun. Now, the rooting interest for me is different than I think most of you, right? Like, if the Preds go far in the playoffs, it's better for business. I'm actively advocating for that. I would like to attend a postseason hockey game. I'm sure at some point that if they make the playoffs, I'll have the opportunity to do so. But, I'm not going to lose sleep if the Preds blow it and miss the playoffs, or if the Preds just kind of peter out in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's not going to bother me that way. Now, for those of you who are living and dying at every puck drop on every Tuesday game against Ottawa throughout the course of, game number 35 or whatever, this is not probably a pleasant experience for you when the chest tightness starts in sports. But to see the kind of desperation that evokes, it's not the same as Kyrie Irving in the Boston Celtics game. Nets and Celtics. Jason Tatum makes the buzzer-beating layup, but Kyrie Irving at the other end, the Celtics have to play phenomenal defense to keep Kyrie, who I believe had, I think it was 42 points in 39 minutes in game 1 of that series. You got to stop their best scorer. And on the opposite side, watching that in the Preds game last night, that was the case for Matt Duchene, who stepped up to the moment, and Philip Forsberg, who was a part of that. By the way, Forsberg's first goal since April the 1st.
And it was a snipe.
Yeah, that stat courtesy of Adam Vingan. So as you heard Lucas say, Matt Duchene becomes the first 40-goal scorer in Preds history and wins the race to 40 that him and Forsberg have been duking it out, basically, all season long. It's been fantastic to watch. And now with Matt Duchene, who is very much a part of the Nashville Predators' future, given the size or rather the length of the contract that he did sign. And by the way, this season's most expensive player, Matt Duchene, making $10 million in this 2021 season, 2022 season, well, 2021, 2022 season, whatever. Making a lot of money and finally living up to that price point, right? This is the thing that I think Preds fans were waiting to come to fruition. You were waiting to see, that return on investment. It had gone, and a variety of different things impacted the last 2 years of sports, college or pro. That's going to, it's just a bit of a mutation, right? You don't know what to make of the last 2 seasons, how real or not real what you were watching was, because I think we can all agree that a college basketball game played in front of 70,000 people is a hell of a lot different than a college basketball game played in an empty gym. Hockey is the same. The NBA is the same. We all understand this at this point, after having gone through pandemic sports. But I could not have enjoyed that game more last night. And by the way, it's kind of it may be a first round preview, right? By virtue of this win and maintaining that spot as the first wild card for the Preds, it's likely that they will see Calgary in the first round. Now, I know that Money Puck, which does a good job of tracking these things, moneypuck.com has the Predators playoff odds up to 95.9%. Lucas, how many more games to go?
5 regular season games left.
5 regular season games left. And of what remain, because I know they finished with the Coyotes. I know we went through the schedule a little bit yesterday. Is there anything on the schedule that Preds fans should be overwhelmingly wary of after having, gutted it out through Calgary last night, who was also a very, very good hockey team?
Well, a trip to the defending Stanley Cup champs on Saturday.
Not ideal.
4 of the next 5 opponents are playoff teams. The only exception is the regular season finale against Arizona.
Less than ideal. But if you can prove that, by the way, earn it. Like, I am a proponent, and again, I say this without any kind of allegiance, so it probably comes across differently if you're a diehard fan of this team or not, or any team for that matter. But my position on that strength of schedule remaining in those 5 regular season games and the team that you played last night, okay, if you want the playoffs, go out and earn it. And I think that we all believe that this Predators team is capable of earning it based on the offensive output that we have seen throughout the course of the year, and the fact that UC Saros, while he had a little bit of a sputter earlier in the week or over the weekend, yeah, you trust that guy a whole hell of a lot. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on the conversation if you would like to. I want you to hear from Matt Duchene last night in his post-game press conference after scoring his 40th goal.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously, to do it in my 900th game too is kind of cool. The reaction from the crowd when they announced it, for me, I was still locked into the game, but, it's one of those things, like you said, you kind of enjoy it after the year, but, the reaction from the crowd was unbelievable, and, it made me a little emotional on the bench for sure. I wanted to give a wave and just kind of stay into the game and stay seated or whatever, but they made it hard not to, feel that moment a little bit, so I really appreciate that from the fans.
So rewarding for Matt Duchene, who's taken a lot of criticism, a lot of scrutiny, right? I mean, for a hot minute there, and for a considerable amount of time, he was probably Nashville sports fans' public enemy number 1.
Yeah, and right now the contract looks worth it because no Predator, as we said in franchise history, has ever had production like this. He's never had production like this in his career. But if we go 2 years from now and we look at maybe the first 4 or 5 years of his deal, and this is the only outlier as far as high-level production, maybe we'll be talking differently about his contract, but we don't know that. We don't know how it's going to continue over the next couple of years. As of right now, it seems worth it.
Doing the playoffs, right?
I mean, yeah.
Earn the playoffs, do it in the playoffs, and then we can have a conversation about the Matt Duchene experience, because there's still many years left on that contract, Lucas. I believe you told me 4 this morning.
Yeah, and he wins the race to 40, but he still may not finish the season with the single-season franchise record. Philip Forsberg notched his 39th goal last night.
It's exciting stuff, and that will continue. As Lucas mentioned earlier, the Preds are at the Lightning on Saturday. It's a 6 p.m. puck drop worth paying attention to throughout the rest of that go. A game hosting the Minnesota Wild, who they just did well to dispatch earlier last week that helped keep them in the playoff picture. Jeff Simmons at the second to Lucas Panzica in attendance with Blue,
right,
who I suppose is probably the most recognized and most famous people in attendance at the Nashville Predators game. Lucas, you said you saw a fellow celebrity sighting last night?
Yeah, after they showed me on the Jumbotron to a massive ovation, they showed Big Jeff on the Jumbotron to a slightly smaller ovation, but he was there.
Well, it's good that people recognize how excited to get about certain things. And so I'm glad that you were properly received that way.
Yes.
I'm very happy. Do you think if they ever put because you guys did that for me one time last year for my birthday, you and my girlfriend Dara, you were able to get my they were kind enough to put happy birthday to me on the Jumbotron at Nissan Stadium during a Nashville SC game. I feel that if that was done at a Predators game, I might get booed. Because everyone that I've attended, they've lost. And it's not been like close losses. Like they've kind of got their asses kicked in every game that I've been to, at least in the last 2 seasons live. Like I think I may get booed.
Would you rather get booed or just there be no response?
Oh, for sure booed.
Yeah.
For sure booed.
Also, Calle Yarncrow got a shout out last night. He was big, had a great year for the Preds last year, was picked up by Seattle in the expansion draft and then dealt to Calgary and went up against his old team. So he had a nice little highlight tape and a thank you from the crowd.
Kevin Fiala, who continues to pop up all over the place. He's a 30-plus goal scorer this year.
He's on a tear.
That can't make you feel all that great.
Ryan Hartman also having a really nice season for Minnesota. There's a few wayward former Preds in Minnesota this season having a good year.
Oh, look at that. First time we've opened with 17 Panzica Preds minutes in the history of the Buck Reising Show. The discussion, you are welcome to participate. 615-737-1045 is how you do so. But there is development in the NFL wide receiver market. I'm going to tell you where the source of the drama around this nonsense is actually coming from. And I'm going to do that coming up next. All right, moving right along on this Wednesday. Welcome back to 104.5 The Zone. Happy to have you guys in for the show. So, there's been some news on the wide receiver front, and I feel like we need to dive into this in a little bit more detail. Very mellow vibes, by the way. Now, I love James Brown. Anytime you can play James Brown, it makes me very happy. I didn't know if you were going to go with a particular kind of playlist today. That seemed to be the way you were trending in our morning meeting. I don't know if that was because you were influenced. No pun intended. Are you just going to leave me out there with the silence?
My playlist today has actually been more geared towards Pilgrimage Fest, which I know we'll talk about.
Oh, spicy. Okay. We'll do that later in the show. But Adam Schefter was on NFL Live yesterday, and I did not make a note of this in real time. I typically DVR it because regardless, I DVR it and I'll catch up with NFL Live. It's one of the better shows on sports television right now, honestly. They do a fantastic job between Marcus Spears and Dan Orlovsky, Laura Rutledge, Mina Kimes, Adam. There's a really good cast that they use for that particular show. Anyway, so Schefter's on NFL Live yesterday, and I don't know how much you think there's going to be any pushback on this just because of what Adam Schefter's been through the last year-ish. I think that there are going to be, I think Schefter, where he was operating in the rare space where you have that kind of stranglehold on an NFL reporting business, because, I mean, he's not just beating all of the national people out. He's not just beating all his colleagues out. He's beating almost every beat reporter, mostly every beat reporter in every NFL market as well. It's a tough thing to do, even if, the ways that it's been exposed that he's gone about doing it are in question at this point. Regardless, I don't know if Schefter's credibility is something that people are going to question in ways that are meaningful. ESPN clearly isn't because they've just paid him $9 million a year. But he's on NFL Live yesterday, and he's talking about the wide receiver situation because obviously we're going through it here with A.J. Brown. Seattle is kind of all up in the air because I don't know if the Seahawks are going to move DK Metcalf at any point, but he is not, it does not seem even remotely in conversations with the Seahawks about an extension. Deebo Samuel is another one of these players, a second-round pick who is being thrust into the spotlight in ways that are uncomfortable for him because the wide receiver market is going crazy and everybody wants the bag, except Schefter is alleging yesterday on television that Deebo Samuel doesn't actually want the bag. Here was Adam Schefter.
Listen, San Francisco wants to pay Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel was the one who scrubbed the 49ers logos off his social media page. Deebo Samuel was the one that essentially basically made it known he wanted to move on. San Francisco would pay Deebo Samuel today, tomorrow, the next day. It's not hard to figure out what the contract would look like. We've seen some of the top numbers in the league. This, I think, right now is Deebo Samuel not wanting to get a deal done. It's not San Francisco not willing to do the deal. The 49ers are ready. Deebo Samuel is the one that has put a halt to everything for right now.
Yeah, I think the chances these guys get traded are the same as me going this segment without.
Okay, so it cuts off there. Why did you just tired of Dan Orlovsky? That was very abrupt.
Yeah, I probably should have just clipped that part off.
Excellent.
I don't know what Dan Orlovsky was going towards.
As always, the highest of quality productions around here.
What do you think he was going to say?
The
chances of them trading are the same chances of Dan Orlovsky doing what?
Should we just put it on a poll, not context? What was Dan Orlovsky going to say at Buck Reising? No. So, Lucas, you DM'd that to me this morning, and my immediate response was, yeah, they've got the same agent, so all of this is, they're all, not all of them, not every professional athlete ever, but a vast majority of them are represented by Creative Artist Agency. We have one in Nashville. It's CAA, okay? This is the place that many of the top athletes and top people in our industry, top people in, literature, whether they're book writing agents, whether it's movies and producers and things of this nature, like CAA represents the biggest, the best, and the brightest, all right? And so when you sent that to me this morning, that was my initial reaction, because immediately the headlines start flying fast and furiously across the internet. Are you buying that? I'm reading the 49ers SB Nation page. Are you buying the report that Deebo Samuel doesn't want to be a 49er? Did you hear Adam Schefter say that Deebo Samuel does not want to be a 49er?
No.
Okay, so the internet is already taking things wildly out of context.
You could argue he alluded to it, but he did not say it.
So I want you to play the audio again, Lucas, and, if you want to leave the abrupt ending of Dan Orlovsky's thought just for I don't know what you were doing there or what Dan was getting ready to say there, if you want to leave that in there, that's fine. But I want you to play the audio again, and then I want you to tell me what you think is happening there, how you received that particular bit of information that Adam Schefter dropped on television yesterday.
Listen, San Francisco wants to pay Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel was the one who scrubbed the 49ers logos off his social media page. Deebo Samuel was the one that essentially basically made it known he wanted to move on. San Francisco would pay Deebo Samuel today, tomorrow, the next day. It's not hard to figure out what the contract would look like. We've seen some of the top numbers in the league. This, I think, right now is Deebo Samuel not wanting to get a deal done. It's not San Francisco not willing to do the deal. The 49ers are ready. Deebo Samuel is the one that has put a halt to everything for right now.
Yeah. I think the chances these guys get traded are the same as me going this segment without.
Me going this segment without what, I wonder?
Without mentioning Carson Wentz. Yeah. Wasn't he the biggest, staunchest supporter of Carson Wentz last season?
More importantly, what do you make of Adam Schefter?
I take away that Deebo Samuel wants to remain with the San Francisco 49ers and wants to get as much out of this new deal as possible and doesn't want to rush into anything.
What Adam Schefter is saying is the 49ers would sign him tomorrow if they could, which, of course, Tennessee would sign A.J. Brown 10 minutes ago if they could.
Yeah, that tells you he doesn't like the number that's in front of him, right?
It's posturing. It's negotiating. Now, Lucas, let's hear from Diana Rossini on who she thinks is going to get the wide receiver contract done first. She was on the radio show yesterday. This was good information that plays into what Schefter is saying because the difference is, kids, AJ and the Titans are actually talking. And none of the other wide receivers at this point, according to the NFL news cycle, are even having those conversations at this point. Play Diana.
I think if there's, and by the way, San Francisco does it very similarly as the Titans do as well in terms of timing of when they do these deals. And it's closer to camp. And here's the thing, the sense I get when I talk to the organizations about these players, it's more or less, we've got all the leverage. They've got another year on their deal. And we don't have to be in a rush to do this. So they're going to take care of the things they need to take care of, stay focused on the draft and get to it. But I do think the good news in all this, if this is just my opinion based on Deebo and
Sure.
Terry and AJ and DK, the one that gets done first, I actually think will be AJ Brown. I think that deal, because they're already moving on it. It's really just because I'm looking at it as a race.
Yeah.
They're at least having conversations where in Washington, they're not doing that yet. And it just seems a little fishier to me compared to where I feel like in Tennessee, both camps I've spoken to, it seems cleaner. It seems clearer, and it's going to get resolved. You got to figure the Titans would probably love for AJ to stay off social a little bit.
I don't need the rest on because we talked at length and the interview was great. Diana's always kills it anytime she's on. And you can check out that full interview in the Buck Reising Show podcast feed, wherever it is that you get your podcast. But you heard her say, yeah, they're actually talking. They're having discussions. You know who else has said this publicly? John Robinson, multiple times. Yeah, we're working through it. Lucas, he was on the radio show at the Combine. I asked him, hey, John, what's the process of Harold and AJ? Yeah, we're having those conversations right now, right? We're just trying to figure out what makes the most sense. And in almost every other situation, it would seem, by the reporting, whether it be Deebo Samuel and the 49ers, whether it be DK Metcalf and the Seattle Seahawks, or Terry McLaurin and the Washington football team / Commanders, even though I don't like that name, they're not talking. AJ is. That's why I was I'm just so pissed off. I walked in here on, what was that, Monday? Or Tuesday, rather. I don't know what day. What day did I freak out about the A.J. Brown stuff? Was that yesterday?
Every day for the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Since A.J. Brown trade rumors started floating around.
But it's not really bothered me until yesterday because Monday was the first day to report for the voluntary off-season program. Monday afternoon, everybody peed their pants about it. And then Tuesday, we had the radio show. So yesterday was the day that I had a bit of a hissy about the A.J. Brown thing being an absolute non-story.
Yeah, because in the PFF thing of the potential Jets offense.
Oh, we have dumbest thing in sports this week at 11 o'clock, by the way. Josh Pate is going to be here for this, and he has just tweeted us and said, I'm driving over to the studio now. Remember to ask me this because I have some things to say.
What, the dumbest thing in sports?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Pate is going to, I'm certain, be passionate on a couple of things that are happening in the world of college football. Some things that if you are a listener, a subscriber of his Late Kick podcast, as both Lucas and I are, you know he is making some very, very well thought out points about the state of that sport at this time. Long story short, here's the thing that you have to remember when you're talking about NFL contract negotiations. Who is player X that you're most interested in, represented by, and who else does that player's agent represent? A.J. Brown is represented by Creative Artists Agency. Deebo Samuel is represented by Creative Artists Agency. Terry McLaurin is not. I believe his agent is Buddy Baker, who is independent of CAA. He has his own shop. And DK Metcalf, I believe, is also a CAA athlete, but I would have to fact check that one quickly as we sit here today. CAA, DK is. Ben Renzen is his agent. Ben Renzen and Todd France. So a couple of really, really high-level executives and agents, power brokers in the football business. This is strategized internally because CAA has so many of these guys and girls across different sports and different industries. This is strategized. There are board meetings, or not board meetings, but there are meetings held in conference rooms for months on end as to how to best approach not just one client, but say you've got 5 of the top 10 most expensive wide receivers who you have in-house. How you negotiate each of those deals across a couple of different NFL franchises is going to have an impact on other clients. It's all this very interconnected web of things that you have to keep in mind. It's not just the sports, right? And honestly, this is the thing that bothers me the most about our industry. We don't have people who cover the business of sports near well enough. Near well enough. Now, there have been, I don't know how many people read the ESPN book, right? That, who's the famous author who wrote the ESPN book? Those guys have all the fun, right? You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but I'm not sure.
I don't know if that kind of stuff has mass appeal. He also wrote a very, very in-depth reported book on Saturday Night Live and on CAA because of the impact that they have across the sports and entertainment industry. I know that that's kind of layered thinking, but these conversations require layered thinking. Adam Schefter on television, though, I think does Deebo Samuel a disservice when he says that Deebo doesn't want to get the deal done. Who is advising Deebo Samuel to not get the deal done? Do you think Deebo Samuel, now, with all due respect to Deebo Samuel, I assume he's ballpark in the same age range as AJ, so 24, 25, at the most 26. I can't imagine that the 26-year-old is trying to pull some kind of high-level $100 million power play on the NFL organization. No, he's being advised. There is strategy to this. This is chess, not checkers, boys and girls. And I think that people have to keep that in mind before they start shouting down Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf or player X who's currently trying to negotiate a contract. There are teams of people behind the player whose contract is due. And to assign all credit and all blame to the player whose contract is currently being negotiated, I think is a completely unrealistic way of looking at how the business of football is done. 615-737-1045. Jump in if you like. When we Come back, we are going to talk with Caleb Herring, who is just committed to the University of Tennessee. Riverdale's own, his head coach, Will Kriesky, is also going to join us, and we are going to talk about his commitment as the top-rated recruit in the state of Tennessee to the University of Tennessee and how much that means to him. That's next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Welcome back. We have the great pleasure of being joined by Caleb Herring and Riverdale head coach Will Kriesky here on the radio show today. Caleb and Coach Kriesky are joining us because Caleb has just committed to the University of Tennessee in the 2023 class. Caleb, first, congratulations to you and your family. I know this has got to be a hugely exciting time, and very much thank you to you both for taking some time out today to hop on with us.
Yes, sir, anytime.
So what went into your decision-making, Caleb? Because obviously your brother was already committed to the University of Tennessee, an early enrollee, but I know that I'm sure that you're looking to kind of blaze your own path there. How much of the impact was it that your brother was already committed, and how much of it was just the best fit for you?
To be honest, my brother, he really wasn't hard on me when it came to like trying to get me to come to UT. He told me like to just like choose a place that's comfortable for me and make the decision that's best for me. And when me committed to UT, like honestly felt like it was like the most fitting place for me. I was comfortable with the coaching staff. They've always been close to me like since my freshman year. So I'm really happy that I chose this school.
I know Vols fans are certainly happy to have you and your commitment. Coach Kriesky, you've obviously coached both of the brothers. How do their skill sets kind of complement each other on the football field, and what kind of athletes are the University of Tennessee getting?
Well, first of all, they're getting two great kids. I mean, they're both outstanding young men. Their parents have done an outstanding job with them. You don't find two better kids in the school that yes sir, no sir type kids. But, they feed off each other. It was very, very unique, to watch them play. When one would make a play, the other one would get jacked and try to make a play. But, they're both long, they're both physical, and they fly around. They're always going 100 miles an hour. Elijah's really physical. Caleb, he's long, and he's learning how to use his body. He's very, very technician, so he wants to do the little things the right way. So he works really, really hard at his position to be the top guy at his spot.
Vols commit Caleb Herring and Riverdale head coach Will Kriesky here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Caleb, how was the recruiting process for you? Because this is a massive deal for you and your family, obviously, but to be an in-state player going to the University of Tennessee, I work every day with Ramon Foster, who played for the University of Tennessee, played 11 years for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He talked about that as being a Hendersonville native and going through that process himself. This is a massive deal. Has that kind of hit you yet?
Right now, it really hasn't hit me. Just going through this process. It's honestly been a blessing, and at times I would get stressed, but I had to tell myself not too many people go through this recruitment and stuff, and it's just have to learn to be blessed throughout this process. But yeah, it really hasn't hit me committing and stuff yet, but yeah, I'm really glad I made this decision.
Now Mike Eckler was your primary recruiter, right?
Yes, sir.
I hear he's a bit of an insane person. Is the chili hot thing, is that something he brings to the recruiting meetings? Does he have that much energy with you and your family when he's sitting in the living room?
Oh yeah, every time I see him, he'll come up to me, screaming, his face is red. Sometimes with me, shake hands and junk, he'll smack my hand super hard and stuff. But yeah, he always brings that energy, and that's what I like most about him.
He coached a couple of guys that I cover with the Tennessee Titans. I hear all kinds of stories about Mike Eckler. Coach Kriesky, working with Josh Heupel and his staff, how has that experience been for you? Because obviously every Vols head coach prioritizes trying to keep in-state talent at the state university, but I know that hasn't always gone the way that Vols fans would have liked it to. How important has that relationship with Coach Heupel and his staff been for you?
Coach Heupel and his staff, once they came in, they've done a really good job. They stayed on top of these two young men. They communicate all the time. Linebacker coach Gene Marie, he does an outstanding job. I've talked to him almost, every time that they're able to talk to high school coaches. I was talking to him weekly about these young men and what they can do. And Coach Gene spent a lot of time in my office with me back right early into Christmas. And you could tell just the relationship he was trying to build. And he's trying to develop that culture with his kids and with his players. And so it was really neat to see that, me, him, and Elijah, I think one day spent a couple hours together and just going over the defense and just sitting there listening to him the way he talked and explained things and was just coaching up Elijah. It was really special. I was just, humbled just to be able to sit in the room and listen to those two.
Well, that's really good progress to see, certainly, and we're very excited for you, Caleb, and certainly for your brother to be a part of the Vols program here in the future. How do you kind of see yourself in the Tennessee defense, Caleb?
Yeah, like going into it, I'm gonna try to be a leader. And, Coach Eck, he told me, my position was going to be the Leo, what Byron Young is playing, just, moving around on the defense, rushing the quarterback, playing 3 down, 4 down, and 2-point stance, dropping back some, just what Byron Young is doing.
Outstanding stuff. Caleb Herring, Coach Will Kriesky at Riverdale High School. So much fun to have you on the radio show today. We really appreciate you guys taking the time. And again, congrats, Caleb. This is really exciting stuff, man.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
It's Caleb Herring and Riverdale head coach Will Kriesky with us on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas, that get you fired up? I heard you. I saw the emotion bubbling up back there. You're excited.
No, it is good to see that communication that sort of has been established between Josh Heupel, his staff, and high school coaches in the Middle Tennessee area, because to not take advantage of this period of individual talent in the state of Tennessee would be potentially an egregious mistake for the regime at the University of Tennessee, and it doesn't appear to be the case at the moment. Everything has been trending positively in recruiting for Josh Heupel in the last calendar year or so. And that was arguably the biggest point of concern coming in, because there was no proof of concept when it came to Josh Heupel and recruiting at a high level.
My junior year of high school was exponentially more lame.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me?
I got fired up to get my license. That was about the height of my junior year.
I was fired up to make the soccer team. Are you kidding me?
No, really, really cool stuff to see for the Herring family, for Caleb and Elijah. And that's got to be a cool thing for Will Kriesky and his coaching staff and the Riverdale program, man. I know how heavily involved Lucas and Ramon Foster and Will Bowling are for the Zone as far as the high school football games of the week are concerned once the high school football season rolls around here in Middle Tennessee. And we do have exceptional high school football teams and talent that I think a lot of people, Lucas, at some point, you're going to, I don't want to say that you're going to have to drag me out there because you have a job to do, but I have to get out to one of these games. We have to find a Friday that makes sense for me to go.
I can't wait for high school football season. Already excited about it.
It's immediately got, have you read the YouTube chat here lately?
No, not quite. Not yet.
Okay. do you want to be made sad?
Sure.
All they're doing is how much they're arguing in the YouTube chat on Zone TV, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Throughout the course of that very entertaining, engaging interview, they're discussing Ryan Tannehill and him just getting absolutely torched on First Take right now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. What's Mad Dog Russo saying about Ryan Tannehill?
I don't know, but I would pay any amount of money humanly possible to have you find that sound. I don't know.
Shut up. Stay low.
But Mad Dog, I just want to hear your opinions on Tannehill. Don't you want to talk about it?
Fair weather, idiot. Say that to anybody. Say it to somebody.
What is that, Bruce Drennan?
Yeah, Bruce had to say.
I haven't heard Bruce Drennan in 8 months.
Yeah, he had to interject.
What happened there?
Him and Mad Dog started going at it. I had to push him out of the room.
You had to break him up. Liam Neeson. Do we need to? Does Mad Dog Russo and Gasbag Bruce Drennan need to be separated back there?
Yes.
Okay. Thank God. Order. Rules of engagement.
It's getting ridiculous back here.
It's a very crowded room. People can only see you when they watch on Zone TV. Little do they know that A.J. Brown, Caleb Farley, Bev Davenport, Liam Neeson, Bruce Drennan, and Stephen A. Smith, they're all back there with you at any given point.
I love Peyton Manning.
It is 11 a.m. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. The wait continues for a handful of wide receivers looking for that second NFL contract, including Titans wideout A.J. Brown. ESPN's Diana Rossini said on the Buck Reising Show Tuesday she believes Brown's deal will be the first to get done.
I do think the good news in all this, if there of those, if this is just my opinion based on Deebo and Terry and AJ and DK, the one that gets done first, I actually think will be AJ Brown. I think that deal, because they're already moving on it.
You can catch that entire interview on the 104.5 The Zone podcast network. Now in San Francisco, Adam Schefter said on Tuesday on ESPN that Deebo Samuel has halted talks with the 49ers and appears to not want to get a deal done for the moment. The Nashville Predators surrendered a 2-goal lead, but hung on to take 2 huge points, winning via shootout over the Calgary Flames. Philip Forsberg, Matt Duchene, the goal scorers. Duchene's goal puts him at 40 for the season for the first time in franchise history and for the first time in his NHL career. That gives the Preds a little more breathing room at that first wildcard spot in the West. With 5 regular season games remaining, 2 points clear of Dallas, 6 points ahead of Vegas, who is on the outside looking in. Now, the Stars will take on the Oilers tonight as the Golden Knights will play the Capitals. The Preds will be back in action on Saturday at the Tampa Bay Lightning. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2 is off and rolling. Welcome in. Welcome back if you've been hanging out with us so far here on 104.5 The Zone. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. You can be in here if you want. 615-737-1045 is the number. Or you can watch the show, live stream it. Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Throw a subscribe button or hit the subscribe button on that YouTube and Twitch channel. You can get a notification every time the live stream pops on for any of our 4 shows. We got Josh Pate of CBS Sports and 247. He's going to be in studio to, kind of reestablish himself. It's been a while since we've heard from the voice of the would-be college football commissioner. And it is time that he hands his proclamations down from on high and also tells us what the hell he's been doing chasing tornadoes. He's apparently has a habit of that. I'm deeply concerned about our friend Josh Pate, but he'll be here in just about 15 minutes from now. Harry Douglas, by the way, I didn't say this off the top. Harry Douglas, former Titans wide receiver, now ESPN hot taker, going to be on at 12:20, so stick around for that as well. A lot to talk about in the world of wide receivers. But first, it is a Wednesday. It is 11 o'clock or thereabouts. That means that we must abide by tradition. Lucas, it's time for the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
"What the is this?"
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
Something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot.
You are really dumb. For real. It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Reising Show.
Hell yeah, it is. 615-737-1045. Tell us what the dumbest thing in sports this week is. We would love to hear from you. I have my own nominee. Lucas has one as well. Apparently, Josh Pate has many. Josh Pate's going to be walking in hot for the dumbest thing in sports this week when he joins the show momentarily. But in the meantime, I would like to start the bidding if I could. Now, we'll do a visual bit on an audio medium. How many of you, raise your hands unless you're driving, and then, of course, 10 and 2. How many of you in the audience are watching Winning Time on HBO? Now, Winning Time is the show. It's not Lucas is raising his hand. Very good. I probably should have played along with my own bit and raised my hand. That would have been much better. Thank you, Lucas, for keeping us afloat. So Winning Time, if you're unfamiliar, it's a mockumentary. Is that the best way to describe it? Because it's not a documentary. It's not historically married to facts and events, but it is telling the general story with some dramatization around Magic Johnson coming to the Lakers, Larry Bird going to the Celtics, and how one of the greatest rivalries historically in sports between LA and Boston and the Lakers' start of, winning championships and things of that nature, how that all got started, right? Telling the story through comedy and through storytelling that is not necessarily, 100% factually accurate. Now, they put a disclaimer on this. Every time you see an episode of Winning Time. And I've kept up with it. I'm up to date. I think it airs every Sunday. So Jerry West, who was one-time Lakers coach, former Lakers executive, Jerry West is portrayed in this show, in Winning Time. Now, Magic Johnson, nobody who's pictured, who's alive to be pictured, in this show is claiming or supporting it, right? Magic Johnson is doing his own thing on like Apple Plus that he's promoting. Magic Johnson wants to tell his own version of events, and he doesn't like the way that he's portrayed here by Quincy Isaiah, who's the actor, and the writers, of course, Adam McKay, who he and Will Ferrell started Funny or Die. Doesn't like the way that they're being portrayed. Nobody, it sounds like, likes the way that they're being portrayed in all of this, except, or with great exception, Jerry West, who it was reported last night by Ramona Shelburne of ESPN. Jerry West, the guy who is literally called the logo in the NBA. Jerry West is demanding a retraction and an apology for what he called, quote, a baseless and malicious assault on his character in the HBO series Winning Time. His team on Tuesday evening sent a legal notice, or rather his legal team sent a notice to the network and to the producer, Adam McKay. ESPN got a hold of the letter. So Jerry West is ready to sue over this whole thing. West's lawyer is alleging that Winning Time falsely and cruelly portrays Jerry West as an out-of-control, intoxicated rageaholic. Which honestly, I don't know Jerry West personally, but that could describe a whole hell of a lot of the coaches that I've ever been exposed to or been around in my life, okay? Like, let's be real, Jerry. It may not be 100% accurate, but you recognize a little bit of the behavior in there. Let's be a little transparent about this. Anyway, Jerry West is suing HBO over this, over a mockumentary series, a thing that's there for entertainment and a thing with a legal disclosure so that they avoid their asses getting sued. Jerry West is the dumbest thing in sports this week.
I just love how the article and his legal team paint him as just, I don't have the words in front of me, but like a loving, just personable, just perfect man who was nothing but gracious and kind to everybody in the Lakers organization.
And Magic Johnson abstained from sex before marriage and all, and Jerry Buss was not, slumming it through clubs in 1980s LA as an NBA owner of a fledgling league. Come on.
Now, the show portrays Jerry West, obviously, as what you just said, as a rageaholic, basically, but the article and his legal team,
out-of-control, intoxicated rageaholic.
But his legal team are portraying him as an angel, which I find hilarious. Somewhere in the middle, I'm sure.
Put that on my tombstone, an out-of-control, intoxicated rageaholic. I love that.
My dumbest thing in sports this week is Ben McAdoo, who, if you forgot, is the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. I must say, did you know before I sent you that yesterday that Ben McAdoo is the OC there?
I did, only because I was ready to welcome moments of Ben McAdoo ridiculousness back into my life because he was a laugh-out-loud funny offensive coordinator. Wasn't he the head coach of the Giants?
Yes, of the New York Giants.
Just a disaster.
I believe he's the head coach with the Eli Manning getting bench deal and Geno Smith getting some starts.
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, it was a whole thing. Anyway, Ben McAdoo, by the way, who has 3 times now in different appearances. One is who was he the offensive coordinator for before the Giants head coaching job? I cannot recall off the top of my head. Lucas, if you could do some quick research on that. But former head coach of the New York Giants, back in our lives as the OC of the Carolina Panthers, and former offensive coordinator, Lucas, of whom?
Former offensive coordinator of the New York Giants.
The New York Giants.
He was elevated.
Promoted within. All right. I Anyway.
It's very anticlimactic.
But that didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to. But point being, he's had 3 equally ridiculous hairstyles in each of his 3 appearances. He has reinvented himself in every stop, like we think he's going to disguise himself as not actually being Ben McAdoo. Anyway, on with your thing.
I don't even need to provide any more context on this. Here's Ben McAdoo and start talking about the starting quarterback situation with the Carolina Panthers, and this edit was done by NFL on CBS on social media.
And you look at Sam as your starting quarterback?
Sam is our starting quarterback, yes.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
You know, one of the things I've been working on is being better talking to you people. So, announcing the starting quarterback here, I just put my foot in the mouth. So that wasn't something I should have said.
Sam's our starting quarterback. Oh, no, he's not. No, psych. It was a fake out.
They put in the SpongeBob 1 minute later.
That was something I probably shouldn't have said.
Oh, goodness. 615-737-1045. Why don't you tell us what you think the dumbest thing in sports this week is, and then we'll welcome our buddy Josh Pate into the proceedings and do a little college ball as well. Dito is in Hartsville, wants to weigh in. What's up?
Yes, sir. I'm actually the dumbest thing in sports. I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, right? So all these commentators on ESPN and stuff for the number 1 pick, they're saying that Aiden Hutchinson could possibly not be the number 1 pick. They're talking about Trayvon Walker. They're talking about Ike Ekwonu. I just think it's the dumbest thing in sports. Clown Town is going to make that pick, Aiden Hutchinson. We're picking Aiden Hutchinson. Get ready, Titans.
Well, thank you for look at that little smack talk. little smack talk from
he's going to be the one.
From the down bad Jags. Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson is going to stop you from being a fan of a team whose head coach credit carded a co-ed in an Ohio bar last year. That'll make things better. Here's the deal. Thank you for the call, by the way, 615-737-1045. I think that Trayvon Walker stuff is real. I really do. Just talking to football people about this stuff, because I've seen those same mock drafts, and mock drafts don't mean a ton at this time of year, but I really do think that that's a legitimate possibility. I think they took themselves out of the offensive line race with the first overall pick when they franchise tagged, inexplicably, Cam Robinson, and they paid Brandon Scherf a whole hell of a lot of money to come play for them in free agency from the Washington football team. Trayvon, I understand that there is dismissal around the Trayvon Walker thing. I think that the Jags really like him, and I think that that's something that you should keep an eye on. And any NFL team would be happy to see Aiden Hutchinson fall to them. Lucas, before we welcome in our buddy Josh Pate, I've just gotten a tweet about 4 minutes ago, and I don't know how to receive it. And I don't know how we should do this because we are of limited time here right now. Jeff Addy or Jeff Adai 7? No context, nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. I have no idea if he's even a listener of the radio show. He's just tweeted me, how do you picture your engagement? ? As to not give it away, but you've thought about it before. I'm being asked engagement questions by people on social media.
That might be on you for bringing it to light.
I think that is. I don't like that at all. I don't like that kind of public pressure from the internet. The walls are closing in around me, and Josh Pate is next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Hell yeah, it is. Welcome back. Here on 104.5 The Zone. We got one of our favorites in studio. He is the man, Josh Pate, CBS Sports, 247 Sports, CBS Sports HQ, Late Kick Live with Josh Pate, the Late Kick Extra podcast. Baby, you can find all your college football needs right there. Just smash that subscribe button. What's going on, my guy?
Y'all are in here talking about everything that I try and avoid. You talk about free agency. You're talking about the draft, and I'm over there in a bunker across town just talking about NIL and the portal and recruiting, and it's a little bubble. It's a nice bubble to live in, though.
I envy you, Bubble Boy, because I've been drowning in what wide receiver did an Instagram Live today about his contract status and the fact that, you know, the people on the internet can't behave themselves when they feel the need to tweet at professional athletes. It's been a never-ending cycle, and it's been happening to me since January, and I think I'm drowning.
What's funny is when you drive around, I'm listening to you. I listen to you say, you know, like A.J. Brown, free agency, blue, 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 blue. I actually hear that in your voice. I don't know if that comes through to everyone else's radio, but I hear it in your voice.
God, I hope not, because that would be terrible ratings-wise. But anyway.
That's what I heard. That's not what you heard?
No, that you hear that because you're too busy being distracted by the free food that people bring you, and then I lose you for half the show.
I got a Chick-fil-A sandwich in here. My name on it.
That means it's done. Now, Josh Pate is here to talk about college football because as our commissioner-elect, we are behind the campaign for Josh Pate as college football commissioner. He has many things that he needs to give to the people. Common sense, logic. But first, Lucas, I think we need to play the music again because Josh Pate has something that he has brought us for the dumbest thing in sports this week. Do it!
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
What the is this?
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot. You are really dumb. For real.
It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Reising Show.
The floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Does anyone ever come to you and say the most obvious things in the world, but say it in a defiant tone? Like if it's 3 a.m. and you say, wow, it's dark out here. Someone says, it's not going to be that dark at 9 a.m. They say it like that.
Yeah, we both have it. It's an app. I log onto it on my phone every day on Twitter. That happens with regular frequency.
Ding, ding, ding. Okay, play the sound effect. Okay, so here's what's happening in my world right now. National Signing Day in recruiting. That's all the way next February. So you're going to have your Bamas and Georgias fighting it out for the top. But this time of year, sometimes those programs haven't made their move yet. So you may have an unfamiliar face, i.e. Texas Tech, currently ranked number 1. Well, yesterday they moved to 2. But when I made the tweet last week and when I made the statement, they were number 1. So I innocently, at least I thought, say, hey, Texas Tech, good for them. Good for Joey McGuire. They've had one top 30 finish in the last decade, sitting at number 1 right now. Let's golf clap.
Golf clap.
Okay. And then they came. And I think you know who I mean when I say they.
You
came,
people.
all lowercase. They came at me and they said, well, I got news for you, brother. They're not going to be number 1 come signing day. They're not going to be number 3 come signing day. And I look and I say, you type and you backspace. And you type and you backspace. Because you type with your head and then you look over at your contract and all the legalese in it and you just backspace. The most defiant things about the most commonsensical things, those have merged in my world recently when we're talking about something as benign as Texas Tech recruiting. Yep. But this happens all the time. This time last year, Penn State ranked number 1 this time of year. And so I give the golf clap to Penn State. Well, they're not going to finish number 1. Got news for you. They're not going to finish number 1. I get that. But what they did finish is top 10, which is really good for them. Texas Tech, like I said, has had 1 top 30 class in the last decade. So they could fall 20 spots. Yeah. And it's still a really good class. So I know we're not here to talk Texas Tech recruiting, but we are here to talk stupidity. And that was stupid.
It's my favorite thing in the world when we have people do the voice that they think their mentions sound like. Because now I've gotten away from it because I used to do a terrible Southern accent that I think I shouldn't do, frankly, because we have too many good and respectable people.
Mm-hmm. More risk than reward.
Yes. I would say that is accurate. And so I have not yet found my new mentions voice, but yours, some kind of like delirious, what am I looking for? Energy drinked out meathead that wants to talk about Texas Tech recruiting. That's the projection that I'm getting from your mentions right now. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, and here's the other very, very important point. I want everyone to turn their radio up just a little bit. You got to go. because they need to be breathing through their mouth when they're making the argument. There is no nostril being used there. It's all mouth breather.
Excellent. Josh Pate is here with us in studio talking mouth breathers, Texas Tech recruiting, and everything else in between.
I'll make that a drop.
It would seem. Listen, we got plenty of mouth breathers. We fight them every day. It's our mission to civilize. So, speaking of mouth breathing topics, there were a lot of things being said by people like us with microphones in front of their faces. Because we on these side of the microphones are not innocent when it comes to mouth breathing either. And I'm not saying Pate. I'm not saying myself. Perhaps sometimes Lucas. But I would say that many, many things about Nick Saban's interview given to the Associated Press about the future sustainability of college football and how name, image, and likeness has impacted it in its earliest phases. A lot of opinion had about this, and a lot of people ripping Nick Saban or saying, oh, look at the old man shaking at clouds. Why should we be listening to Nick Saban more closely?
Because every change that's happened in the sport over, let's call it the last decade, he has initially pushed back on, and then he's harnessed it to beat you into submission even worse than he was in the early stages of his time at Alabama.
That guy's good.
Yeah,
pretty good.
I get a little bit of behind the scenes. Like when we've spoken to him, when I've had him on the show, he'll give you some off the record time and he'll just shoot straight with you. He shoots pretty straight publicly though. What I'm trying to tell folks listening is it's not an act. Like when he's talking publicly to you, it's the same stuff he says off the record. And really, if he wanted to, he could unbutton a couple of his top buttons and say, if you really want to do this, that's fine. But I'm going to figuratively cut your head off with it. Like I'm going to use this. I'm going to fashion this into another tool with which to beat you into submission. So with NIL and the portal, like he was pushing back on what was going to become of this at its very outset. He never railed against guys making money. In fact, he was pushing for that stuff a long time ago in the NIL front.
Yeah.
What he was against is what a lot of folks have turned NIL into, which is pay for play. But I get some folks in my mentions, like I have keep my inbox open, so I get it all day of Nick Saban says something, and people, they have what they want to be true, which is he's scared, and then they speak it as if it is true, which it's not. And I just try and remind folks, like, every change that you've thought he was fighting against, whether it was tempo-based offenses, offensive linemen 3 yards downfield, the transfer portal, NIL, the playoff, everything he's pushed against, he has used to further dominate you. This will be no different. Alabama's not at a resource disadvantage. Yeah. If this was Baylor or TCU we were talking about, and it was the head coach there, okay, Alabama's at the top of the food chain. They are the apex predator in the sport, so anything that is made to loosen the sport up more, he's going to take advantage of. He's actually one of the guys, and this is why I respect it so much, that is speaking beyond himself. He's actually speaking in terms of what's best for the sport.
On behalf of college football.
Sure is.
And I think that gets so lost because, and I listened to this on Late Kick Live. By the way, there's so many more good insights. I don't want to give away all of Josh's content. I want you to go to the 247 Sports YouTube page right now. I want you to hit the subscribe button so you can get Late Kick Live every time they pop on. It's invaluable as far as the world of college football is concerned. He's speaking on behalf of the sport because there's a conversation being had around his sport that there is a diminishment, right? We've stripped it bare. It's all NIL. We're doing things in a way corporately, or at least publicly, greedily and corporately as ever things have been done in college football. And now their conversation, rightly or wrongly, has started about, all right, is this a diminished product that we're having? And Nick Saban, people are projecting their own, as you said, people are projecting their own needs and wants about what they want Nick Saban to be feeling onto Nick Saban when he is doing the job that we have laid out, that you have laid out more specifically, as to how it is that college football needs guidance in this to keep some of the things that we hold sacred in place without all of it being just left to the NCAA's devices, which is basically to sit on their hands through all of this.
You know what the irony is? If I were to do nothing else, if I were to change nothing else over the past 15 years, other than Miami, the Dolphins, get Dante Culpepper, Saban stays in Miami, just never comes to Alabama.
Yeah.
If I just changed that, we wouldn't have the dynasty that has been run off in Tuscaloosa over 15 years. And therefore, I'm a believer. I can't prove this. I'm a believer. A lot of the grasping at straws, whether it be expanding the postseason or whether it be enacting NIL or the portal or whatever, It's just a reaction to trying to dethrone what has pretty consistently been the top program and top coach in college football over the last 15 years. Now, folks will tell you that's not true. Folks their retort will be, no, this is about something bigger than him. No, it's not. Because it always draws back to the ire you have that your administration, whether it be X university or Y university, has not made the proper investment, made the proper hires. You haven't been able to beat him. And so instead of worrying about outside in, you're trying to change everything from the inside out. It's not the way it's going to work. If I just were to rid the sport of Nick Saban, a lot of people's problems, quote unquote, with the sport would have been alleviated. What I'm saying is, we have let the wrong hands get on the college football wheel, and we've overturned like 80% of the sport over the existence of one guy who won't be there forever, by the way.
No. If you say so.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Brady was supposed to retire too this year, and then all of a sudden Tom Brady's back on my television and playing in golf matches and then going to win another Super Bowl this year. So I'll take your word for it that Nick Saban's not going to be there forever. But until such things come to pass, I don't know, man. But your point is well taken because, I mean, it is so hard to find quality coaching. And this is the thing that, for the University of Tennessee's sake, has been turned over. Now, listen, the University of Tennessee is the source of its own ills. Like, they have made indiscretions through their hiring process, and that has kept them back. That has hampered them throughout all of this. But everybody keeps trying to do this thing where they keep up with Nick Saban. And at the same time, the sport, the dynamics of how the sport is regulated, about how recruiting is done, and all these different things that coaches are now having to account for in trying to build their programs and sustain their programs. I have to imagine, and I'm sure you talk to plenty of coaches and assistants and things of this nature, people are just sick of it. Like, we're going to run the best people out in ways that we were already doing.
I tell you, I think I mentioned this last time I was in here, but it bears repeating. The day after Georgia wins the national title, they're still up in Indianapolis, and Kirby Smart does his next morning sit-down with ESPN, as has become tradition. And he took the time on that platform that he could be using to market his program, recruit, do whatever he wants to, and he actually gave a warning. He gave like a Saban-esque warning shot to the sport. And he said, what we're doing right now is not sustainable. Now, since that time, he's lost one of his best coaches. Didn't get run off. There was no scandal. It was Matt Luke, who was his offensive line coach, former Ole Miss head coach. He just quit. He said, I'm not taking it anymore. Can't take it anymore. I got too much mental burnout. That was a grinder. That guy's not lazy. He's a grinder.
No, he took the job after everything that happened at Ole Miss. Like, that's not somebody who's willing to walk away from a daunting challenge.
What happened is what Kirby Smart said turned out to be pretty prophetic. That's the top program. That's one of the best in the country. I want you to now bear in mind, if you're a coach at Idaho, if you're a coach at West Virginia, you're still having to keep the same hours. You just don't get near the same shine, near the same amount of zeros on your paycheck. And a lot of folks are, quite honestly, if we were to do an introspective, it's the same way in our industry. Yeah. In certain corners of our industry, there are a lot of quality people who are more than qualified to be behind that glass or be on this mic, but because of things that are happening maybe at the front office level or maybe the structural level, they say, forget this. I'll go sell insurance. I'll go do something else. It's not because they weren't qualified. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they got questionable character. It's because you've got an internal problem. Like, you got a problem in your world. And a lot of these coaches, they're telling you behind the scenes, and now a lot of them are bold enough to just say it publicly, we don't have proper governance. We don't have proper leadership. The wrong hands are on the wheel. And up to and including even at the university levels. Like, I've been talking all morning with people at the administrative level at certain universities where they're worried they're pricing out their fans, kind of like NASCAR did in the late 90s and early 2000s. Took the P1s for granted, took the diehards for granted in search for the casual fan. Well, the problem is they grasped, and the casual fan just kind of bypassed it, and then they looked back or their diehards are gone. We've priced them out, or we boxed them out. There are a lot of people inside the world of college football concerned that's what's happening there right now. And it's not one issue. It's like 10 or 15 issues that we're talking about.
Josh Pate is here with us in studio talking about college football as it is currently consisted. How much louder has that noise gotten over the course of the last calendar year?
Exponentially. Yeah. I'd say over the past 12 to 18 months, exponentially, because I think a lot of folks saw NIL coming, or they heard the transfer portal talked about, but it was always in theory. And there was always that hope. If you see that headline, which we see like every 3 weeks online, where there's an asteroid headed towards Earth, they never actually hit. So something happens. I don't know if Bruce Willis is involved or not, but something happens, and the asteroid doesn't hit.
But I'll watch it every time it's on. I swear.
That's a documentary, is it not?
Yeah, listen, I mean, Jerry West is suing HBO over the latest documentary being made about the Lakers. But
So Armageddon, the NASA mockumentary notwithstanding. Yes, a lot of folks just thought it'll swerve us. Something will happen. An adult in the room will step up. No one did. Nope. The adults you're counting on here, those aren't adults you want to.
That's the adult in the room. That's what's happening. It's just it's a clown show, bro. Sports is a microcosm of society, and it turns out sports has as many problems as society does right now as far as just general regulation and governance is concerned. Do you want to talk about actual college football?
I'd love to.
Would you like to do that?
I think the last 2 times I've been in here, if you're just a casual, observer of the sport from afar and you've just listened to us, you think the sport's in the dumpster somewhere out back. No, it's not that bad.
I think that's the sports talk radio in me.
Yeah.
I think that's where I gravitate.
Yeah,
so we're going to talk about actual college football. People are calling in. They want to talk to Josh Pate because he's a popular guy and he's a smart guy. And the commissioner-elect of college football is going to talk about some actual college football coming up next. Welcome back. Roll me up and smoke me when I die. That's what we're doing today. Unbelievable.
Had to happen at some point.
You know what? If it's going to be anybody's day, damn it needs to be Willie Nelson's day. Roll one up, Willie. I heard Willie's backing off, though. I heard he's taking it easy. He's getting up there in age. You know, respiratory things are things that people are concerned about right now. So hopefully Willie is doing what he loves on the day that I'm certain he's celebrating on. But this is just another day for Willie Nelson. It's just a day. It's a day for the casuals. We don't have time for the casuals. That's why Josh Pate is here with us in studio.
Yeah, lowercase they.
What do you mean? I've got a YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and Twitch live stream going. Half the time they're in there selling drugs. That's who I'm convinced is the only people listening to sports talk radio in the middle of the day. The people trying to get a dime bag off, commenter X, Y, and Z in the YouTube chat.
Or
today.
just screaming at us. Mark, after an all cap saying that winning time is just a way to hide LeBron and the losing Lakers, says the Vols will contend for the SEC East Championship.
I need a Lakers QAnon conspiracy like I need, more A.J. Brown Twitter bio discussion. Let's talk about tornado chasing. Actually, no. Let's talk about college football.
They're interchangeable when it comes to me.
That's what I hear, but let's save the latter or the former for later. Let's talk about the SEC and as you see things kind of shaking out right now, because the ESPN FPI came out. It made me very happy to hear you take a metaphorical blowtorch to it and anything like it and just light it on fire for me having to look at Auburn as the 10th best team in the country according to some metric that nobody will tell me how the metric is actually discernible. Who is the second best team in the SEC East right now to you?
I tensed up. I have a pen in my hand. I don't have any paper. My arms are fully tensed right now you mentioned FPI.
Which is deeply concerning because Josh Pate is sneaky jacked. So there's a lot of veins. There's a lot of bulging going on in the studio right now. That CBS Sports HQ polo he's wearing is not equipped for the gun show today.
So speaking of secret. Okay, FPI is not so secret trash. Here's how bad it is. I came from Columbus, Georgia, which is like 45 minutes away from Auburn. Those folks are diehard.
Yeah.
They're all in. It was so bad that they were making fun of FPI for ranking their own team too high, which I don't think I've ever heard before.
No.
So they put Auburn up there top 10. Just as a point of reference, the early Vegas over-under win totals for Auburn would have them missing a bowl game. I think the over-under is 5 or 5.5.
I saw that.
Yes.
Saw a bunch of people tweeting that out. I think it was a strong contingent of Auburn fans, in fact.
This is not a middle school football schedule.
They went back to the message boards. They threw it back 20 years. Yeah. They said, look at these clowns.
So who is the second best team? It's a Bama, Georgia world.
Yeah.
It's the way it is. Bruce Hornsby, great song, and he's right. That's the way it is. Now, what I'm very interested to see is these are not programs without questions. Like Bama's offensive line is relative to past Bama teams. It's about a subpar group right now before they raid the portal again, as we've seen in a while. Georgia, I think you could see sort of a flip of identity over there. They're never going to abandon defense. It's always going to be the name of the game, but they have there's no probably to it. They have the best set of offensive skill that they've had. They will probably have to lean on offense as much as they have at any point during Kirby Smart's tenure.
Yeah.
Now, the fun thing is they thought they had a quarterback battle down there until Kirby Smart, like he did last December, said, I'm not benching him, morons. Like, that's our quarterback. Well, he just did the same thing the other day. Somebody asked him in the postgame presser after their backup, threw a couple of dimes in a spring game. We've got a controversy on our hands?
That's right.
And he said, listen, our guys know who our starting quarterback is. And then he dropped you know what I mean? Hands up, move on.
That's all you got to do. But this goes back to the Saban conversation that we were having earlier. I think people are so used to hearing the words coach speak that they've stopped actually listening to the coaches about this stuff, which has to be extremely frustrating for the coaches.
Right. I mean, coach speak is real. And coach speak is something that, quite frankly, I would probably traffic in. I wouldn't give you anything if I was a coach, especially if I were young. But guys like Saban, Smart, even though he's kind of young, relatively speaking, he's already established. When those guys will open up, Dabo's another one. Like, people don't like Dabo because they disagree with a lot of what he says. I respect him whether I agree with him or not because he's honest. He's one of the few out there that you can count on to give a question and know that you're going to get honesty back. Don't care if I agree with it. Just thank you for being honest and open about whatever's on your heart. Jimbo's like that, for better or for worse. And believe it or not, you think I talk fast. That guy averages like twice the amount of words per minute I average. It's insane.
It's truly a gift. We need a translator. We need subtitles on Jimbo Fisher press conferences. Josh Pate, CBS Sports HQ, 247 Sports, Late Kick Live. Check it out. Live streaming on YouTube and wherever you get your favorite podcast or your podcast app. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can get Josh's insights on the world of college football.
Lane Kiffin, one of those too, would you say?
I would say that. And a lot of people have kind of labeled Lane Kiffin, and you can label him however you want to. Lane Kiffin's a guy who will also be very open with you, very honest. But Lane Kiffin, there is no more self-aware coach in the SEC, maybe in college football, than Lane Kiffin, up to and including last week when it's prom season in Mississippi.
Oh, no. What is he doing?
He took a photo with the guys, too.
Yeah. After some public relations person just said, Lane! Lane!
Post the picture with the high school boys.
With the guys out there.
So after the publicist screamed at him to post the picture of him and the high school boys, and he did, Lane Kiffin had a picture of himself with, I would say, probably 30 high school girls in his backyard at the pool.
A huge prom group. Ridiculously huge.
It's so great. I mean, he embraces it. He knows what his reputation is. Totally earned. He has an alter ego. He has an alter ego that everybody knows the name of. Everybody knows the name Joey Freshwater. That's the name he used when he was at Alabama and past places and bars.
They weren't ready for Joey Chlorine.
It's crazy.
They weren't ready.
So that is, if you want the winning time in the SEC, that's the guy you need to go do the mockumentary of. Because he's going to watch it and say, no, that happened. He's not Jerry Westing you. Yep, that happened. That happened.
Jerry West, an angel, I'm sure, in any regard. All right, so here's what we're going to do, because we do have major breaking news in the world of the NFL, so we need to hit the sound, and then we are going to...
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
All right, Jeff Darlington. He just spoke to wide receiver Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel has just asked the San Francisco 49ers for a trade.
South Carolina legend.
Deebo is asking out of San Francisco. So here's what we're going to do with that. We're going to talk about that later because we're in the middle of a college football conversation that I would like to keep going. And if I'm going to stick my face back into the wide receiver offseason buzzsaw, we will do it after our guest, Josh Pate, has left our presence, although I'm sure he's salivating, chomping at the bit to discuss Deebo Samuel's
I do have a take on that really quick.
Would you like?
Buck, it sounds like Deebo wants out. Back to you.
Okay. That's the local news anchor in him. Is Florida ready right now after having undergone the coaching change that they did? Are they ready to legitimately compete in the SEC East? Because I'm looking at Kentucky as the second best in that side of the conference right now, and I don't know what to expect from the Gators this year, which I'm sure makes Tennessee fans very, very happy.
No, they're not ready yet. They're not ready defensively. They'll have to be a team that averages upper 30s per game this year offensively. The good news for them is at least they have an answer at quarterback. There's not a blank. So they got Anthony Richardson in that quarterback blank. But I sat through their spring game so you guys didn't have to. You're welcome. And while I was providing that service to the community, I realized they don't have nearly the wide receiver depth that they need to. Now, they lack depth across the board. This will be the most active post-spring portal team of any team in the SEC. Our guys think that they'll add half a dozen more. They'll probably lose 6 to 12. So they're going to have this massive overturn, which used to be like sacrilege to even speak about. Now it's commonplace. So Florida will not look in the fall like they just look. But if they don't add 2 pretty dynamic playmakers at receiver minimum and get a lot more depth and versatility defensively, attrition is what will bite them, especially if you play them later in the year. It's going to be tough sledding for them. Year one, no, I don't think so.
So Josh Pate's latest episode of Late Kick is available to you now. It's the Spring Mega Intel podcast. There's a lot of good tidbits in there that you must check out the podcast for. But before I ask you about, the insanity of chasing tornadoes across the country, what is one bit of intel that you can share with the audience that you found particularly relevant to the upcoming college football season? Something that piqued your interest, caught your attention, or made you think about something from a different perspective than you already had?
They've been making fun of me because I keep talking about Arkansas, but I really believe in Arkansas. Like, Arkansas is not – they are not just a really, really interesting sauce, and they popped last year, and no one really knows what to expect for encore. There's a lot of meat behind what they're doing right now. They they also have a quarterback in KJ Jefferson that, while I'm not ready to tout as a Heisman contender, very, very dependable guy, solid top 3 caliber guy in the SEC. But also, they are a destination now.
Yeah.
People just flat out will not believe this, but it's reality. They are not a backup option anymore. I've spoken to coaches there. I've spoken to players there. These are people with options that are choosing to either go there or stay there. But also, they just got Jaden Hazelwood out of the portal, one of the best receivers at Oklahoma, who just didn't want to go west. He wanted to stay closer to home. Drew Sanders, his only crime at Alabama was he happened to be playing behind the best pass rusher in the history of the program in Will Anderson. And Dallas Turner, by the way, here's a piece of intel. I had a coach tell me, Will Anderson's the best player in college football right now at Alabama. Take him, put him to the side. Take Bama's second and third best pass rushers, who are Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. He said if you took that duo and put them on any other team, it'd be the most fierce pass rush combo we've seen in several years. That's without their number one. All 3 of those guys will be on the field at the same time in Tuscaloosa this fall. Yeah. So back to my point, Drew Sanders was the 4th best pass rusher there. Very, very good player. He went up to Arkansas. He's immediately all over the field for him. Arkansas is going to be a very good team again this year. They're really challenging themselves with the out-of-conference. They already play in the SEC West. They're going to play Cincinnati as well. So Brigham Young, I think they go up there. I think that's right. So Arkansas,
logistically, yes.
If they were in another conference, you would be forced to view them as a playoff contender. Because they're in the SEC, you just assume, they'll suffer the meat grinder effect, and I don't have to worry about them, which is the effect of the Southeastern Conference. But it doesn't change the fact that they're a very high-caliber program.
I laughed the first time I saw you tweet people with options are choosing Arkansas. But no, I don't think there's going to be many people laughing in the SEC that are playing Arkansas next year that are going to be laughing at that kind of a tweet. Why the hell are you chasing tornadoes across the country? Lucas has tried to book you several times. Apparently, you've been basically to Seattle and back, is what you told me. You're an insane person. What's wrong with you?
So I didn't realize this, but the last 2 times he's asked me, I said, actually, no, I'm storm chasing next week.
As if that's just normal behavior.
Yeah.
Let me check my calendar. Oh, no.
No, I'm tracking down this nor'easter. I'm sure that's not the proper
Kansas next week.
Meteorological term, if I can even get the word out.
My question is, why not?
There's some great many reasons.
I have no answer for that.
Look, this stuff is fun. I've been fascinated with it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I developed an interest in that. I got buddies who developed interest in other things, up to and including like crystal meth when they were kids. Guess where they are now? So at least my passion has remained affordable.
Yes.
Depending on gas prices.
Well, I don't know, bud.
And very thrilling. Like if you could ever witness one, it's kind of like the roller coaster effect, but it just lasts for a long time. I've never done peyote, but I've had people explain to me what that's like, and I would explain it kind of like that. Yeah, I told you I got an eclectic group of friends back home.
Sounds like it. Peyote and meth sounds like a big time.
I drove 1,900 miles in 2 days last week, and I was so locked in it didn't even feel like it. That's Nashville to Seattle. I checked. I asked Stats and Info before I came in. That's Nashville to Seattle, and saw nothing. But yet, I told you, I've seen 7 in my life, documented 7 tornadoes in my life. I don't know, something about like the scope and like majesty of atmospheric science when you can witness it, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. It lets you know how relatively small you are. Some people would not take comfort in that. I actually do. I actually kind of enjoy that.
One of those people.
Yeah.
Not comforted by that.
It's awesome, though.
It's an expensive hobby these days.
It's very expensive, but I wear the same shirt every day, so I'm not spending money on anything else. So, like, why not go chase a tornado or 2 every now and then?
You know what? Far be it from us to diminish Josh Pate's passion when he is not talking about college football on CBS Sports HQ, Late Kick Live, which you can check out on the 247 Sports YouTube channel when that pops on live. Subscribe to the channel. You will get a notification when that quality program begins. And if you miss any of it live, the Late Kick podcast is available to you whenever you get your podcast. My friend, it's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure indeed. I'm going to go eat whatever's left in the break room.
Deebo Samuel takes next.
Jelly beans.
Jelly beans.
It is 12:04. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Breaking news from Jeff Darlington of ESPN. San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel, after speaking to Darlington, has said that he has asked the 49ers to trade him. Darlington goes on to say he did not want to discuss specific reasons behind the request, but he has let the organization know his desire to leave. So that'll open up the trade market for one wide receiver seeking his second contract. This comes after Adam Schefter appeared on ESPN Tuesday and said Deebo Samuel had halted talks with the Niners and appeared to not want to get a deal done, at least for the moment. The Atlanta Braves defeated the LA Dodgers last night 3-1 to improve to 6-7, even the series up at one game apiece. Rubber match happening this afternoon in a couple of hours, a 2:10 first pitch in Los Angeles. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour off and rolling. We got breaking news. We got Harry Douglas of ESPN. Former Titans wide receiver will be with us in just about 15 minutes from now. And we certainly have a big conversation to have. Now, Lucas Panzica is back there making it happen. We are here with you, by the way, until 1 o'clock. We're a little out of sorts because we were wrapping up the Josh Pate segment and the Deebo Samuel news broke. Now, if you're just now joining us, welcome in. If you've been with us, you know that according to Jeff Darlington of ESPN, he spoke to wide receiver Deebo Samuel. This was 24 minutes ago. And Deebo has told Jeff Darlington that Deebo has requested a trade from the San Francisco 49ers.
Did he say it like that? Makes it sound like Deebo speaking in third person.
I imagine that's how this is going at this point.
Yeah.
But I was trying, because Jeff Darlington is reading this in the context of me, and I am not Jeff Darlington, so I was trying to adapt that on the fly.
I sincerely hope that's how Deebo Samuel put it to Jeff Darlington.
Deebo would like a trade. Signed, sincerely, Deebo Samuel.
And to the 49ers organization.
615-737-1045 is the number. Look, maybe now Pro Football Focus will get the who's stopping this offense graphic they truly desire, except instead of lusting after A.J. Brown, they can slap Deebo Samuel in the middle of there.
There's already been a Colts one. Who's stopping this duo, Jonathan Taylor, Deebo Samuel?
From Pro Football Focus?
Yes, from PFF's fantasy football account. Literally just put that out there.
All right, honestly,
it's a troll at this point.
Which I would be inclined to respect more than if it was just done for the purposes of social media content.
Absolutely.
Because good on them. If they're gonna piss me off with this stuff, just lean full in.
Yeah, at this point, it is a bit. It has to be.
I can't stand this.
All of this. Seconds after the news. Who's stopping this duo?
It really is a form of just deep and twisted and hugely useless art. Harry Douglas will discuss this with us here in about 15 minutes. But here's the thing. Lucas, play the Diana Rossini clip from yesterday's show again, if you would, about why she believes A.J. Brown is going to be the first one of these wide receivers to get a deal done. This is important context to have when listening to the Deebo conversation, because the Deebo conversation has gotten completely out of hand, clearly.
I think if there's, and by the way, San Francisco does it very similarly as the Titans do as well in terms of timing of when they do these deals, and it's closer to camp. And here's the thing, the sense I get when I talk to the organizations about these players, it's more or less, we've got all the leverage. You know, they've got another year on their deal. And we don't have to be in a rush to do this. So they're going to take care of the things they need to take care of, stay focused on the draft, and get to it. But I do think the good news in all this, if they're of those, if this is just my opinion based on Deebo and Terry and AJ and DK, the one that gets done first, I actually think will be AJ Brown. I think that deal, because they're already moving on it. It's really just because I'm looking at it as a race.
Yeah,
they're at least having conversations. Where in Washington, they're not doing that yet. And it just seems a little fishier to me compared to where I feel like in Tennessee, both camps I've spoken to, it seems cleaner. It seems clearer, and it's going to get resolved. You got to figure.
So Diana goes on there because we were having a discussion yesterday about A.J. Brown's Twitter behavior and things of that nature. But the larger point stands, right? The A.J. Brown situation, as has been reported, as has been discussed publicly multiple times by the general manager of the Tennessee Titans, A.J. Brown has never been in danger of not getting a contract, never been in danger of being traded to the Jets or whomever else has called to inquire about A.J. Brown. Do they take the phone call? Yes. But they are publicly and privately working to make sure that A.J. stays in Tennessee. This has never, ever, outside of in the imaginations of some of you, this has never been in question. Not once. Other than we got bored when there weren't enough transactions flying across the NFL ecosystem to distract us with all kinds of bright and shiny new names in different places. The A.J. Brown conversation was not relevant as far as, oh my goodness, what do we do if he doesn't show up for the first day of school, for the first day of voluntary off-season program? The Deebo thing, Terry McLaurin's situation, DK Metcalf's circumstance, they are all complex and different, even though 3 of those 4 are represented by the same agency. Adam Schefter this morning reported on the Deebo Samuel circumstance, and now this gives more credence to what Adam Schefter said, or rather yesterday on NFL Live when Schefter reported that Deebo Samuel was the one who was stalling in the contract talks.
Listen, San Francisco wants to pay Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel was the one who scrubbed the 49ers logos off his social media page. Deebo Samuel was the one that essentially basically made it known he wanted to move on. San Francisco would pay Deebo Samuel today, tomorrow, the next day. It's not hard to figure out what the contract would look like. We've seen some of the top numbers in the league. This, I think, right now is Deebo Samuel not wanting to get a deal done. It's not San Francisco not willing to do the deal. The 49ers are ready. Deebo Samuel is the one that has put a halt to everything for right now.
Yeah, I think the chances these guys get traded are the same as me going this segment
without mentioning.
I forgot about the Orlovsky thing. It's the 3rd time. You just let it sit there.
You haven't given a good submission yet.
I don't have a good submission. I have no earthly idea what Dan Orlovsky.
Without mentioning that the Titans should trade for Baker Mayfield.
I think this should be your bit. I think it should be your bit to figure out what Dan Orlovsky was going to say in the middle of that segment.
He did throw the Titans out there as a potential landing spot for Baker.
Dan, Dan does great work, but some of those things are fanciful, to say the least. But the larger point stands. Deebo and his representation, again, Deebo is the one who has requested the trade, but the request is not being made. Deebo is not texting John Lynch, the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, to be like, hey, John, how you doing today, bud? How's your Wednesday going? Can I have a trade? I'd like to get out of here, please. I'm tired of Jimmy G. I don't know what Trey Lance is. Just let me go. Let go and let football God at this point. That's not happening. Deebo Samuel is saying, okay, what are my options? He's meeting with his agency, his representation, his team of people who are responsible for negotiating all the ins and outs of the contract. He's saying, what are the options on the table for me? And they ask him, are you happy in San Francisco? Do you want to stay here? And at some point over the last couple of months, between Mike McDaniel, the former offensive coordinator, becoming the head coach of the Dolphins, and whatever the hell is happening in San Francisco since then, Deebo Samuel has decided that, yeah, I don't think that this is the best place for me anymore. We don't know specifically yet. I'm sure details will come out in the hours and days from now. We don't know yet what was the tipping point. We don't know if the offer that they put in front of Deebo Samuel, he felt, or his representation felt, was disrespectful to the talent that Deebo is. Our friend Carmen Vitale from the Draft Network, she tweeted out, speaking to a former or a current NFC coach who has coached against Deebo Samuel, basically she sent a text about Deebo Samuel. The coach sent back a bunch of eye emojis and said Deebo is a top 3 player in the sport right now. I don't know if that's necessarily so because there's a lot of quarterbacks, and I understand that Deebo's got a lot of creative uses, but if the coaching gets less creative, how much more creative can Deebo Samuel be unto himself?
Yeah, that feels like hyperbole.
Yeah, Lucas is back there making faces like he smelled something bad. Point being, this is the kind of thing we were all waiting for the shoe to drop as far as, all right, are any of these young wide receivers actually going to get moved? Metcalf, Brown, Samuel, McLaurin's never been really talked about for a trade candidate, but as you heard Diana Rossini describe there earlier, things are murky between Terry McLaurin and the Washington football team right now. The only place where there is clarity, kids, even though whomever wants to get a bunch of attention on social media or start fires where they're not, A.J. Brown and the Tennessee Titans' circumstance has never been in any true danger of coming to an end in the immediate future. And with that, I would say 10 deep breaths or 20 short ones, whichever restores your heart rate to the place that it needs to be. Harry Douglas will get our heart rates going again. Harry Douglas of ESPN and, of course, former Titans wide receiver is going to talk about these wide receiver circumstances coming up next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
All right, so Harry Douglas going to be here in just a second, but first, I'm going to see if I can beat Lucas to the breaking news center.
Breaking Titans news on 104.5 The Zone.
It's so annoying. Yes, breaking news that steamrolls me every time there's breaking news. Sam Stockard, and let me double check where Sam Stockard is doing the reporting from. He does not appear to have affiliation, but Nate Rao, who has done the reporting on the Titan Stadium circumstance for Axios, has retweeted this. House Finance in Tennessee passes $52.8 billion budget with $500 million in bonds issued for the Titans domed stadium. Chairlady Hazelwood happy with the budget and not concerned it exceeded the Copeland cap. So I'm unfamiliar with the logistics of the last part of that news, but the Tennessee House has passed the budget, the $52.8 billion budget, with $500 million in bonds issued for the Titans Dome Stadium. So that's just been made official by Tennessee legislature, and that is a massive part of the process to getting the Titans' new stadium built. Again, I said this before, and we can talk about this more in detail tomorrow because Harry's about to join us. But I told you guys many, many times that as soon as this information was out there, this was always the direction that they were heading. It's just a matter of where the money is coming from, which is no small detail. But once they decided that this was going to be the more economical approach, the more practical approach, and certainly the more attractive proposition for the Titans organization, for the NFL, and for the city of Nashville, this stadium was always going to get built. Now, again, the Titans have not officially committed to the building of a new stadium, but this is one of several steps that will take place to make sure that this thing gets done in the foreseeable future. No time frame as of yet, but we will keep you updated with the latest details on that. All right, let's get the people going. Let's welcome in one of our favorites. He is Harry Douglas, former Titans and Falcons wide receiver, now spitting takes like fire on ESPN across all of their many platforms. My brother, how are we?
I'm doing well. See, Buck, I just ran in the house. I'm outside cutting my grass. My yard is big. I cut my own grass. I do it with a push mower. So I'm doing this interview right now with no shirt on and some shorts because I'm sweating.
The working man, Harry Douglas, cuts his own grass. This is the kind of blue-collar mentality that made him such a success in the NFL for so many years. Okay, so while you were cutting your grass, did you see that Deebo Samuel requested a trade?
Oh, of course. It would have been done probably an hour ago if I would have been checking my phone every 10 minutes for news that I was looking for when it came to the NFL, the draft, anything of that sort, basketball, because, I got to cover it all, baseball, basketball, football, hockey. I got to cover it all. So, look, I'm always looking at my phone for content. So I would have been done an hour ago, but instead I was still doing my job, looking for information that I might have to talk about because I go on radio tomorrow, ESPN Radio, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and also on Friday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Just a little something, Buck. Just a little something.
It's must listen. It's appointment content anytime Harry Douglas is on the mic or on camera. All right, so what do you make of this wide receiver nonsense, Harry? Because they've been, or not they, but there has been widespread panic here in Tennessee that for some reason, inexplicably, even though John Robinson has gone on record twice saying they're going to keep A.J. Brown, the people are frantic about the A.J. Brown circumstance. Now Deebo Samuel is asking out of San Francisco, according to your ESPN colleague Jeff Darlington. And I have no idea whether DK Metcalf is going to be a wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks in 2022 or not, but it's all been a mess. What have you made of the entirety of these of the reporting around these guys?
Well, first thing I want to say, and I want to talk to Sam, I want them to understand something, right? When you get into this business and you're trying to provide for your family, you want to make sure your family is secure for a very, very long time. There's nothing selfish about that from a player. I'm all for players standing up for themselves, especially if they understand their worth and getting their money. Now, I don't like when fans try to say players are selfish in doing so.
Agreed.
Because
there's a flip side of it. I don't see why they don't get upset with the organizations for doing what's best for them when they release and let people go, when they still have a contract that they should abide by. So to me, it contradicts itself, and it makes no sense to me. On top of that, owners are billionaires. So why are you mad at the player who are trying to secure his family and their future, and not mad at the billionaire owners who we know are secure? It makes no sense to me. When I was in Atlanta, Roddy White, he held out my second year in the league, and he didn't come to anything until he got his money. No one on our team had a problem with that. We knew Roddy was a big part of our team. We knew what he was doing. We understood that it wasn't personal, but that he was trying to secure his family's future. And that's what people need to start understanding. Now, Deebo Samuel, you got people from San Francisco 49ers sending them death threats to him. He's selfish. Well, but damn, Buck, a few minutes ago, you was cheering and rah-rah and coo-cooing for Deebo Samuel to score a touchdown. Go, Deebo, go. But now all of a sudden you upset and mad because he wants to secure his future for his family. In my eyes, I don't think things should be viewed that way. Now, you look at four guys I'll mention here. You look at DK Metcalf. You look at A.J. Brown. You look at Deebo Samuel. You look at Terry McLaurin. I think all those guys deserve a new contract because I think they have outplayed the one that they're currently on. And I don't like when people say you have to abide by your contract. Well, that's not the way it works anymore. Right? If these players are outperforming their contract, they're going to want new deals. And we have seen, and I'll start with the Tennessee Titans. We've seen that offense without A.J. Brown, who means so much to it. We've seen that offense, and we've seen Ryan Tannehill, not to no pun intended, but we've seen Ryan Tannehill without A.J. Brown, have we not, Buck?
Plenty, and it's not a pleasant experience.
And we have seen him with A.J. Brown, right or wrong.
Right, and it looks a hell of a lot better, Harry, particularly on third down.
Now, when you go to Deebo Samuel, you look at that team last year. You tell me, I'm going to tell you to be a defensive coordinator right quick, but be a defensive coordinator. You're standing up in the meeting room, and there's no Deebo Samuel on the San Francisco 49ers. Says you got a game plan for that defense. Is it going to be easier?
Yes, it would be substantially easier, even though George Kittle is clearly an insane person to have to defend.
Okay, now you can double them.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Now you can double them, and you can possibly shut them down because you have that luxury to double them because you don't have a Deebo Samuel. You got to worry about lining up at wideout, coming in motion, or lining up in the backfield. Now you go to Washington, the Washington Commanders, Terry McLaurin. Besides Antonio Gibson and Logan Thomas, but Logan Thomas is not on that level yet, who in the hell are they going to get the football to if Terry McLaurin is not on that team?
Yeah, I mean, Carson Wentz without Terry McLaurin is going to be an unpleasant experience. That I can almost guarantee. And
then you look at the Seattle Seahawks. You see Tyler Lockett. They do have Tyler Lockett, but I'll tell you this. Buda Baker got an interception against the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf, he's DK. He could have took the playoff. He hawked that man down, stopped him from scoring a touchdown. But then when I watched DK Metcalf film, this man is never taking plays off. I see him punking DBs, trying to knock him out in the run game, being physical.
Yeah.
So I think he deserves a new contract. So with all this stuff I just mentioned, the moral of the story is when you are these organizations and you have a guy who has done things the right way in your organization and they're performing at a very high level, not a mediocre level, but a very, very high level, pay them their damn money. Bottom line.
Harry Douglas, spitting facts here on 104.5 The Zone. We're talking about this wide receiver market and how insane it has been. Here's the thing, though, that people get so caught up in, Harry. And I'm not saying that Adam Schefter put it in a light intentionally, but when Adam Schefter was on NFL Live yesterday and he's talking about the San Francisco 49ers would sign Deebo yesterday if they could. They want to get the deal done. It's Deebo that's dragging his feet. That completely leaves out the context when I'm watching that of what it is that the San Francisco 49ers have put in front of Deebo Samuel and how far away it is from where he and his representation think he needs to be valued. I think that these guys get a one-sided story told on them far too often.
I agree with you. And it's back to what I said at the beginning. Players know and understand their worth. Just because you put a deal out in front of me don't mean it's the right deal for me. It's worth my play. Anybody can put a deal in front of you, but if it doesn't equate to what you're doing or how you're performing on the football field, and in Deebo's case, as a returner, as a running back, as a guy coming in motion, as a guy receiving the football, anything you want to mention. Hell, you can throw anything out there. Hell, if you want to put him at DB and safety, Deebo will make an impact.
He's just a football player.
Exactly. You have to reward guys like that. Now, I hate when it gets to this point because I hate when people have to fight and claw for stuff that they deserve, right? And do you hear anything about any of these guys off the field? No, you don't. Not only are they performing on the field, they're not causing you issues and problems off of the field. But to me, it kind of sends the wrong message to other players that might want to come to your organization in the future.
Harry Douglas here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Harry, social media is playing such a big part in all of this news cycle going around because we've and I've talked about this at great length. I'm sure you have as well. We're all more connected than we've ever been, for better or worse. You can have access to your favorite players as long as they check their mentions, and it turns out a lot of them do. We see the way that Baker Mayfield is talking about his status in Cleveland on podcasts, and A.J. Brown is tweeting out things that Titans fans are going after him for, and how quickly we're watching them tweet through how it is that players who are negotiating $100 million contracts potentially, what the stressors of going through that kind of thing at 24, 25 years old are. And yet it is putting, I think, again, unfair scrutiny on the athletes just because they're expressing that publicly in ways that players of previous generations have not been able to do. What do you make of the impact of social media in all of this?
I think it plays a huge part because now these players and these athletes, they have a voice. And like you just mentioned, but times are different to where back then you had to be quiet about things or 100% everybody looked at you as selfish if you wanted to get your money and your play. Players are smarter now. They understand their worth, and they're not just going to go out there and take anything that you throw at them because they have so many things going on off the football field as well, and they have money saved up, and they're smarter when it comes to an investment, to things of that stuff. So now you can't just say, hey, take it or leave it. Now if you tell them to take it or leave it, they're going to tell you to trade them, and they're going to go get it somewhere else. And you can't fault the athlete for doing that. You can't fault Deebo Samuel for requesting a trade. If the 49ers don't want to value him the way he should be valued, in my eyes, that's him stepping up and doing what's best for his life and his play.
It's Harry Douglas of ESPN, former Titans, former Falcons wide receiver, kind enough to give us some of his time. Harry, you've been talking all over the place. People can catch you on ESPN Radio tomorrow afternoon and Friday afternoon as well. He's been absolutely killing it on any platform they put him on because Harry's a star. This is what he does. That's what makes him one of the best. We appreciate your time, boss man.
No problem, Buck. Appreciate it, man.
That's Harry Douglas there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Man who cuts his own grass. Respectable. I like that. You cut your grass?
No.
I don't cut my grass either.
My roommate does.
I don't even have grass. I've got like a small, very, 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 very small. I don't even need a lawnmower. I have a lawnmower that I don't use. I cut my grass with a weed whip.
Yeah, we have a small lawn too.
Yeah,
I did grow it up though, and it was a push mower.
I already have people, and I hope I'm not betraying a confidence here. Jared Searcy, one of the first. I've gotten several of these, but Jared's the first one that I just happen to have in front of me. He's DM'd me on Twitter. Okay, hear me out. Titans send the first-round pick for Deebo and convince him and AJ to ride their rookie deals out and go for the ship this 1 year. You can't pay two of them. Now, I know that everybody is looking at the Rams and being like, all right, trade for everybody. Trade for all of them, all of the good players, all of them right now. And by the way, Deebo Samuel could be had for a first-round pick. If Tyreek Hill only went for one first-round pick, 5 total selections over the course of this draft and the next year's draft, then you can have a first-round pick, even one as low in value as 26, because what you're dealing with there is basically a second. You could put together a package of picks that would acquire Deebo Samuel. Yes, that's so. I think it would take more than a first-round pick to get Deebo, and then you would have to pay him on the back end. And you cannot afford to pay AJ and Deebo at the same time, even as you would not have to worry about the finances for either of them until next year. when those contracts officially went into place because they would merely be extensions on their rookie deals. The deals have not expired yet. I think that, I mean, this is going to be a conversation had by every NFL franchise in the league, not named the 49ers. Go get Deebo Samuel. Go get him right now. If you don't care about winning a Super Bowl this year. And I think the reality of the situation is much less cut and dried, black and white, than most football fans would think. Baker Mayfield. So there's a difference between the last couple of trade requests, right, that we've dealt with in the news cycle. Baker Mayfield says, I demand a trade from the Cleveland Browns. And the collective NFL just shrugs its shoulders and says, okay, do your podcast, be betrayed, be hurt, be disappointed, and kick rocks while you do so. Deshaun Watson will be the Browns quarterback, if not next year because of suspensions, for the foreseeable future. Deebo Samuel requests a trade. You're going to have plenty of hell. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins just traded for Tyreek Hill. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami tried to get back in the mix. There are going to be plenty of people. I know Lucas made a face when I said that because they've already given up assets.
They're paying a few guys already, too.
I'm telling you, do not underestimate coaches and their comfort level with personnel that they know. Look no further than 4 hours down the road in Atlanta, where the Atlanta Titans are now being fielded, coached by Arthur Smith.
Sure, and with what we just saw the Los Angeles Rams do last year, you can mortgage anything.
I'm sure Mike McDaniel is cursing the name of Deebo Samuel today, though, because he's like, what the hell? I just gave up all this draft capital for Tyreek when I could have had Deebo again and we could have made music together again with a quarterback with also hugely limited. Oof.
Now, I understand you just said the entire NFL is essentially on notice here, but the Colts have to be at or near the top of that list of teams to watch in this, right?
One would think. Their weaponry is not any kind of special. Michael, I don't know what Michael Pittman Jr. is. All I know is all Michael Pittman Jr. seems to catch is touchdowns. I don't think he doesn't have a great percentage or catch rate on third down, but touchdowns, he'll kill you. T.Y. Hilton is clearly at the end. Is T.Y. still an unrestricted free agent?
I believe he is still a free agent.
Okay, so T.Y. Hilton still floating around out there. Could you name me another Colts skill position player?
Paris Campbell.
Okay. That was a lot
But
easier.
it doesn't exactly inspire confidence.
No, Paris Campbell has been an outright disappointment there because I think he was a second-round pick out of Ohio State. If memory serves. Point being, Indianapolis has money. Indianapolis has draft capital because they didn't spend a whole hell of a lot to go get Matt Ryan. So they've got the ability to do this. And that would, of course, make Titans fans miserable because Matt Ryan gets a hell of a lot scarier if you have creativity and the proper coordinator and staff to deploy Deebo Samuel the right way. Deebo Samuel is a good football player. Deebo Samuel can play football, right? The question is, what's made him special? How much of what has made Deebo Samuel special, how much of it was because of the way that they were creatively deploying Deebo? Last call for phone calls is what we'll do next. Poll questions as well. And also, do you want to save this Netflix thing for another day? I feel like I have more on this than the next segment deserves.
Yeah.
Anyway, polls next. Welcome back. Now, before we do polls, we got some phone calls that we need to take. And, of course, some other things that we need to address. But one of those things is the fact that 104.5 The Zone's 2022 Spring Golf Classic is underway next week, next Monday. We're going to be broadcasting live out there. It's presented by Ferguson HVAC, and it is being held at one of Middle Tennessee's most prestigious private courses. You can come play at Old Natchez Country Club. Now, the tickets are sold out, but here's what you can do. You can add your team to the waiting list in case a team becomes available by signing up at 1045thezone.com. Many thanks to our friends at Comprehensive Security, Two Rivers Ford, Nashville SC, Edley's Barbecue, so many others that are making the 1045 The Zone Spring Golf Classic possible. Sign up for the waiting list at 1045thezone.com right now. All right, so you, Lucas, you have asked to talk about the lineup at Pilgrimage Fest. And now, help me, because this is the one that's held in Franklin, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the one that is mostly put on by Justin Timberlake and his people? My understanding?
That I'm not sure of. That sounds right.
I thought they had heavy involvement in Pilgrimage Fest.
I wouldn't be able to comment on that. You might be right, though. I think I have heard that before.
Either way, what do you want to talk about with Pilgrimage Fest?
Well, the lineup came out today.
Oh, spicy. Who's on it?
Does Chris Stapleton intrigue you?
He does. Indeed, he does. He's one of the few country people that intrigues me.
Brandy Carlisle headlining alongside Chris Stapleton.
That would be worth seeing for sure.
The Avett Brothers, Trampled by Turtles, and Lake Street Dive, who I just played coming back from break, who I will go just to see them.
I like their sound very much. Is that all you're offering me?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay. That's
Have you ever been to Pilgrimage Fest?
No, clearly not.
It's a great time. I saw the Foo Fighters there. Rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins.
Yes. I don't know. Something about the music festival atmosphere. I just don't want to be around people like that. You know, I don't like the idea. Not that I don't want to be around people. Like, that sounds hugely pretentious, and maybe there's no way to do this without sounding pretentious. I don't like it's in the summer, right?
It's in September. So
hot, hot as hell.
It is hot. Closer
hot
to the fall, but hot, yeah.
Surrounded by a bunch of people who are likely heavily intoxicated.
Yep.
I'm not necessarily opposed to intoxication of a variety of forms. But what I will tell you is I don't like when those people, spill on me or sweat on me or, are singing the song louder next to me than the artist that I can hear in front of me. The music festival atmosphere is not something that I'm prone to do. I used to, the first couple times I came to Nashville was because my friend went to Vanderbilt. Parents bought like 10 of us the 4-day passes for CMA Fest. It was a great time when I was a sophomore in college. Now at like 28, I want air conditioning.
The great thing about Pilgrimage Fest is it's kind of like going to Bonnaroo without going to Bonnaroo and having to camp out and be committed to, living in the heat for 4 days. If that's not your thing, but it's on a farm, a ton of open space. You don't have to be in the thick of the front of the crowd, Buck, being sweat on by people. You can be hanging out in the back and get just as enjoyable of an experience, bouncing around to food trucks, different stages. I think you should check it out.
Maybe this will be the way that we branch out. Now, I was offered, I've never been to Bonnaroo either, but I was offered artist passes one year and declined.
You're a fool for that. You are a fool for doing that.
I don't even know what comes with the artist passes. What does that mean?
I don't know, but you were offered some way to go to Bonnaroo and you declined it, and you're a fool for it.
Yeah, no, I was under Tomahawk Chop says Buck hates hippies. No, in fact, I'm a proponent of the hippies. In fact, I'm much more prone to the hippie behavior than any other kind of behavior. I just don't like sweat and heat. It doesn't do it for me. Mostly other people's. My own I got to live with. Everybody else's, no thanks. Do some polls.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Because the polls have closed and the votes have been tallied, it's time for a poll update. And he's a good boy. Buck Reising Show producer and correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. You can custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They will deliver it to you. when it gets manufactured. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Lebowski says out of control, intoxicated rageaholic when talking about Jerry West's portrayal in Winning Time on HBO. And he said, who got a hold of my latest performance review?
I think all of us could be described as that at some point in our lives. It's just Jerry West isn't crazy about that being done in Sunday night primetime on HBO for everybody's enjoyment.
Tad says MLB blackouts. The Grizz and the Preds play on both Bally channels last night while the Braves are on TBS, but the channel is blacked out in Nashville for the game. I do not understand the point of not wanting people to watch the game and make that extra revenue.
TBS was blacked out?
I cannot confirm that. I did not watch the Braves last night. I did watch them on the first game in L.A. just to watch Freddie Freeman crank a homer in the first inning.
Yeah, that's just to watch the pain and suffering of the first home run of the year for Freddie Freeman coming at the expense of me. Look at that. Listen to that evil laugh. I imagine you picturing Will Bowling's agony where that cackle comes from.
I have plenty of Braves friends that I picture.
Yeah.
Lucas Davis says the Colts trading for Deebo without a first-round pick.
Oh, I can't do it. They don't need a first round. I don't think they need a first-round pick to do it. I just think it's going to cost a hell of a lot more if you don't have a first-round pick.
Who finishes with more goals, Matt Duchene or Philip Forsberg? How about this? Final results, 50-50.
It's never happened before in the history of the show.
First time in the history of the show.
My understanding.
Has Josh Heupel alleviated your recruiting concerns? 74% say yes. Danny says best QB prospect at UT since Peyton. Top in-state prospect locked down. Transfer portal players producing big time. Heupel is recruiting at a high level. I have no concerns.
The aforementioned top in-state recruit, Caleb Herring, and his head coach at Riverdale, Will Kriesky, was on the show today. You can get all of our great interviews, whether that be Harry Douglas, whether that be Josh Pate, or Caleb Herring and Will Kriesky. You can check that out in the Buck Reising Show podcast.
Who will be the most improved team in the SEC in 2022? Tomahawk says Bama. Rick says Tennessee. Brad says LSU. Eric says it's Tennessee. If anyone says South Carolina, they are crazy. I disagree with that. I think South Carolina is a great candidate for most improved team in the SEC.
We will see what happens with Spencer Rattler this year. Their spring game, they looked enthusiastic. They packed out that house. That was wild.
They started a graduate assistant at quarterback last season.
The disgust.
Not saying they're going to win the Natty, but come on.
Listen, their head coach may be my favorite just because of that ridiculous interview he gave post-Georgia game. Those are the polls.
Those are the polls.
That's the show. Play to Mickey, you're next.